Ambassador Zekthara walked through the empty halls of the Galactic Council building. Her blue skin glowed softly in the dim light as she moved toward the old archives. It was late and most beings had gone home to their families. But Zekthara could not sleep. Something was bothering her and had been for weeks now. 50 years had passed since the human war ended. The galaxy called it a war, but Zekthara knew better. It was not a war when one side had no chance to fight back. The humans had been destroyed completely. Every world they lived on was burned. Every ship they owned was broken. Every man, woman, and child was killed. The galaxy had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. Zekthara had been young then. She remembered the fear that spread through every world. Humans were violent, they said. Humans could not be trusted. Humans would destroy everything if they were allowed to grow strong. So the great powers of the galaxy came together and ended the human race in just 3 months. Now, 50 years later, the galaxy was peaceful. Trade moved freely between worlds. Wars were small and quickly ended. The Galactic Council kept order, and most beings were happy. But Zekthara felt something was wrong. She had started reading the old files, trying to understand what really happened during those dark months. The archive doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, millions of data crystals held the history of the galaxy. Zekthara went to the section marked Human Conflict Classified. Her security codes still worked, even though few people cared about old human files anymore. She pulled up the first reports from 51 years ago. Back then, humans had just started to explore beyond their home system. They had built colonies on 12 worlds and had a small but growing fleet of ships. Most species thought they were primitive and backward. Their technology was simple compared to the great civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. But something had scared the galaxy enough to destroy them completely. Zekthara read through battle, reports, and intelligence files. The humans had fought bravely, but they were completely outnumbered. For every human ship, the galaxy had sent 100. For every human soldier, there were 1,000 aliens. It should have been over in days, not months. Yet the reports showed something strange. Human tactics kept changing. Their weapons kept improving. Even as their worlds burned, they seemed to learn and adapt faster than should have been possible. Some reports mentioned humans using technology that their civilization should not have been able to create. Then Zekthara found something that made her stop breathing for a moment. It was a report from Admiral Corex, the Mantari commander who led the final assault on Earth. The report had been sealed and marked for Elder review only. The humans are not what they appear to be, the report said. Our intelligence was wrong. They have capabilities we do not understand. I recommend immediate contact with the Elder species before proceeding with final operations. But there was no record of contact with the Elders. The next report simply said that Earth had been destroyed and all humans were confirmed dead. Zekthara felt a chill run down her spine. The Elders were the oldest beings in the galaxy. Races like the Crystal Architects and the Energy Watchers had been alive when most stars were young. They rarely spoke to the younger species, but when they did, their words carried great weight. She searched deeper into the files. Hidden in a subfolder marked Rejected Recommendations, she found messages from Elder species. All of them said the same thing in different ways. Do not wake the sleeping ones. Let the dreamers rest. Do not awaken what should remain dormant. The messages made no sense. Humans had not been sleeping or dreaming. They had been building colonies and exploring space. They were very much awake and active, unless the Elders knew something that the younger species did not. Zekthara spent hours reading through more files. She found records of strange signals detected during the final battles. Energy readings that made no sense. Reports of human ships that seemed to disappear completely. Not just destroyed, but gone in ways that physics said was impossible. The most disturbing report came from the cleanup crews sent to former human worlds after the war. Several teams reported finding facilities that had not shown up on any scans during the attacks. Underground bases with technology that was far beyond what humans should have possessed. But when the sites were investigated further, they were always found empty, as if they had been abandoned long before the war began. As dawn approached, Zekthara made a decision that would change everything. She accessed the restricted Elder archives, using codes that she technically should not have possessed. Deep in the crystal databanks, she found a single file marked Emergency Protocols, Human Contingency. Inside was a map showing the location of a vault deep beneath the council building. The vault was marked with symbols she had never seen before, and a simple message in the Old Elder script. In case of galactic extinction event, break seal. Zekthara took the elevator down to levels she had never visited before. The lower sections of the building were older, built when the council was first formed thousands of years ago. The walls here were made of the same crystal material that the architect race used for their most important structures. Following the map, she found herself standing before a door that seemed to be carved from a single piece of black stone. The symbols from the file glowed softly on its surface. When she touched the door, it recognized her genetic signature and slowly began to open. Inside the vault was a single object, a human stasis pod. The pod was clearly human technology, but it was unlike anything in the historical records. The metal was smooth and perfect, showing no signs of age despite being 50 years old. Lights blinked steadily on control panels covered in human writing. Zekthara walked around the pod slowly. Through the clear cover, she could see a human inside, a female with dark skin and black hair. She appeared to be sleeping peacefully, as if she might wake up at any moment. On the side of the pod was a plaque with writing in both human script and elder symbols. Zekthara's translator slowly worked through the human words. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Military Strategic Command. Awakening authorized only by Elder Council vote or in response to galactic extinction level threat. Below that, in the flowing script of the Elders, was a longer message. The child races acted in fear and ignorance. They believed they had won a victory, but they have only ensured their own doom. The humans do not die as others die. They do not sleep as others sleep. They waited and they watched and they learned. Now they dream of justice and their dreams will reshape the stars themselves. Zekthara stepped back from the pod, her heart racing. If this message was true, then everything the galaxy believed about the human war was wrong. The humans had not been destroyed. They had been waiting. She looked at the control panels again. The lights were blinking in a pattern that seemed almost like a heartbeat, or like a countdown. As she stood there in the quiet vault, surrounded by crystal walls and ancient technology, Zekthara realized that she held the power to change everything. The human inside the pod was alive. The Elders had preserved her for a reason. The question was, should she wake her up? Outside the vault, the galaxy continued its peaceful existence, unaware that in the depths of the council building, a decision was about to be made that would determine the fate of every living being among the stars. Zekthara reached toward the control panel, her hand trembling slightly. The choice was hers to make. 3 days later, Zekthara stood in her private laboratory aboard the research ship Harmony's Edge. The human stasis pod sat in the center of the room, connected to dozens of monitoring devices. She had told her crew that it was an artifact recovered from an archaeological site. Only she knew the truth. For 3 days she had studied the pod's systems. Human technology was supposed to be primitive, but the stasis pod was more advanced than anything the galaxy currently possessed. The power source was completely unknown. The life support systems were running processes that her best scientists could not understand. Zekthara had not slept well since bringing the pod aboard. Every time she closed her eyes, she thought about the Elder warning. But she also thought about the guilt she had carried for 50 years. Her own people, the Voidani, had been among the loudest voices calling for human destruction. They had sent 3 full fleets to the war. She had been a young officer then, serving on one of those fleets. She remembered the celebrations when Earth burned. She remembered the parties when the last human colony fell. At the time, it had felt like justice. Humans were dangerous, everyone said. They had to be stopped before they grew too powerful. But now, looking at the peaceful face of the sleeping human, Zekthara wondered if they had simply been afraid. Afraid of a young race that might one day challenge the established order of the galaxy. Her computer chimed softly. The pod systems had finished their internal checks. All readings showed green. The human inside was stable and ready for awakening. All Zekthara had to do was press a single button. She hesitated. Once she did this, there would be no going back. The human would wake up in a galaxy that had murdered her entire species. What would she do? What would she say? And more importantly, what would she know? Zekthara took a deep breath and pressed the button. The pod hummed quietly as its systems came online. Gases hissed as the stasis chambers vented. The clear cover began to rise slowly. Inside, the human's eyes began to move beneath closed lids. Dr. Elena Vasquez opened her eyes and sat up in one smooth motion. Zekathara stepped backward, startled by how quickly the human moved. Elena looked around the laboratory with calm, intelligent eyes. There was no confusion, no disorientation that usually came with waking from stasis. It was as if she had simply been taking a nap. 50 years, 2 months, 16 days, Elena said in perfect galactic standard. Her voice was steady and clear. Close to our projections. You know how long you were asleep? Zekathara asked. Elena smiled, but it was not a warm smile. I know many things, Ambassador Zekathara of the Voidani Empire. I know that you found my pod in the Elder Vault beneath the Council building. I know that you brought me here against the direct warnings of your people. And I know that you did it because you feel guilty about what your species did to mine. Zekathara's skin went pale blue. How do you know my name? How do you know any of that? Because we have been watching, Elena said simply. She stood up from the pod, moving with the easy grace of someone in perfect physical condition. Did you really think that a species capable of interstellar travel could be completely destroyed in 3 months? Did you think we would fight a war we knew we could not win without preparing for what came next? Elena walked to the laboratory's main display screen and activated it with a gesture. Star charts appeared showing the entire galaxy. As Zekathara watched in growing alarm, thousands of red dots began appearing on the map. They were everywhere, in asteroid fields, in empty space, orbiting dead stars hidden in nebulas. Each dot represents one of our hidden facilities, Elena explained. We knew this day would come. My people saw the fear in your eyes when we started exploring beyond Earth. We saw how the established powers looked at us, not as potential partners, but as threats to be eliminated. But the war, Zekathara said weakly, your people fought, they died. We found bodies, burned cities. We gave you what you expected to find, Elena replied. Every battle was designed to make you believe you were winning. Every destroyed colony was evacuated long before your fleets arrived. Every human ship that was destroyed was empty, except for volunteers who chose to die to make the deception complete. Elena touched the screen again. New information appeared, showing ship movements and resource flows over the past 50 years. While you celebrated your victory, we have been busy. We studied your technology, your tactics, your politics. We infiltrated your networks, your governments, your military systems. We learned everything about every species in the galaxy. That's impossible, Zekathara whispered. Our security systems would have detected any infiltration. Your security systems were designed by species that think in predictable ways, Elena said. Humans think differently. We adapt, we improvise. We find solutions that others cannot imagine. The screen changed again, showing technical specifications for weapons and ships that Zekathara had never seen before. The designs were clearly human, but incorporated technology from dozens of different species. They were not just advanced, they were revolutionary. 50 years of preparation, Elena continued. 50 years of gathering resources, building facilities, training personnel. 50 years of waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves. Like, what do you want? Zekathara asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Elena turned away from the screen and looked directly at her. Justice. As if triggered by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Zekathara ran to her communication console and activated it. Her ship's captain appeared on screen, his face filled with panic. Ambassador, we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system, he reported. Ships are appearing from nowhere. Technology we do not recognize. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. What are they saying? Zekathara demanded. Before the captain could answer, Elena walked over and touched the communication panel. Suddenly, every screen in the laboratory activated, showing the same image. A human male in a military uniform, standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a warship. People of the galaxy, the human said, his voice carrying to every ship, every station, every world. This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Human Liberation Fleet. 50 years ago, you tried to destroy us. You believed you had succeeded. You were wrong. The image shifted to show views of space around dozens of different star systems. In each one, massive human ships were appearing as if materializing from thin air. They were larger and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We have been watching you," Admiral Chen continued. "We have been learning from you, and we have been preparing for this day. Today the galaxy learns what happens when you try to commit genocide against the human race." Elena looked at Zekthara with eyes that held no warmth, no mercy. "You wanted to wake me up, Ambassador. You wanted to ease your guilt by saving one human life. But what you actually did was trigger the Awakening Protocol." "Awakening Protocol?" Zekthara repeated. "Every human facility, every hidden ship, every sleeping operative has been waiting for the signal that I just sent," Elena explained. "My awakening was the signal. The long sleep is over." The screen showed more views from around the galaxy. Human ships were appearing near every major military installation, every important trade route, every seat of government. They were not attacking yet, but their presence was unmistakable. "The elders tried to warn you," Elena said. "They knew what we were. They knew what we were capable of. But your people were too afraid and too proud to listen." Zekthara sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had unleashed. "What happens now?" Elena walked back to the stasis pod and began removing equipment from hidden compartments, weapons, communication devices, and tools that Zekthara did not recognize. "Now, Ambassador, you get to see what 50 years of human anger and human planning can accomplish," Elena said. "Your people tried to erase us from existence. We are going to return the favor." The alarms continued to sound as reports came in from across the galaxy. Human forces were revealing themselves everywhere, and it was clear that they had been preparing for this moment for decades. Zekthara realized that she had not saved a human life. She had awakened something that had been waiting patiently for revenge. The galaxy would never be the same. The first attacks began 12 hours after Elena's awakening. They did not come as massive fleet battles or planetary bombardments. Instead, they came as whispers of destruction that spread across the galaxy like a deadly plague. On the Mantari homeworld, Admiral Corex was reviewing defensive positions when his personal communicator activated. On the screen was a human face he had never seen before, but the voice spoke with perfect knowledge of his past. "Hello, Admiral," the human said. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen. 50 years ago, you led the final assault on Earth. You killed my parents, my brothers, my children. Today, I return the favor." Before Corex could respond, explosions began rocking his command center. Somehow, humans had infiltrated the most secure military facility on the planet, but that was impossible. The building was surrounded by energy shields and guarded by the best soldiers in the Mantari fleet. As security alarms screamed around him, Corex realized that the humans had not broken into his facility. They had been inside all along, waiting. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Voidani Prime, the capital city's power grid failed when humans who had been disguised as maintenance workers for decades suddenly revealed themselves. On the Thek mining worlds, entire automated systems turned against their operators, following programming that had been secretly installed years ago. The galaxy's military leaders quickly realized they were fighting an enemy unlike any they had faced before. These were not the primitive humans they remembered from 50 years ago. These humans fought with perfect knowledge of every defensive system, every tactical doctrine, every weakness in galactic military structure. Elena stood on the bridge of a human ship that had materialized near Proxima Prime, the galactic capital. Through the viewing ports, she could see the massive space stations and defensive platforms that protected the seat of galactic government. They looked impressive, but she knew every detail of their construction, every flaw in their design. "Status report," she requested from her communications officer. "Phase 1 is complete across all sectors," the officer reported. "We have successfully infiltrated or disabled 78% of major military installations. Phase 2 units are standing by for activation." Elena nodded. Phase 1 had been about revealing themselves and demonstrating their capabilities. Phase 2 would be about taking control. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. "Target priority, command and control systems. We want them confused, not dead. Not yet." Across the galaxy, human operatives who had spent decades building false identities suddenly shed their disguises. The friendly Altarian who had worked as a system administrator for the Galactic Defense Network revealed herself to be a human intelligence officer. The quiet Zakari, who had served as a communications technician on dozens of military bases, was actually a human sabotage specialist. They had been hiding in plain sight, using advanced technology to alter their appearance and suppress their human genetic signatures. For 50 years, they had been the galaxy's trusted servants, technicians, and advisors. Now they became its worst nightmare. On Earth's former location, now called Sector 0 and marked as a dead zone, massive structures began rising from the sun itself. Admiral Marcus Chen watched from his flagship as humanity's greatest secret was finally revealed. The humans had not just hidden in asteroids and empty space. They had built their primary base inside the star that had once warmed their homeworld. Using technology that the galaxy could barely understand, they had created habitats within the stellar core, powered by the star's own energy. Magnificent, isn't it? Chen said to his bridge crew. They thought they had destroyed us completely. They never imagined we would make our enemy's victory into our greatest strength. The structures emerging from the star were not just buildings, they were warships. Hundreds of them, each one larger than anything the galaxy had ever constructed. They had been built over 50 years using materials harvested from the star itself, forged in nuclear fire and cooled in the vacuum of space. As the human fleet took formation around their stellar fortress, Chen opened a communication channel to every government in the galaxy. Leaders of the so-called civilized galaxy, he began, his image appearing on screens from the Mantari Council chambers to the Voidani Parliament. 50 years ago, you declared that humanity was too dangerous to exist. Today you discover what danger truly means. The response was immediate. Every major power began mobilizing their fleets, calling up reserves and activating emergency protocols. But as their ships moved to respond to human threats, they found their systems failing in mysterious ways. Navigation computers provided false coordinates. Weapon systems refused to fire. Communication networks carried false orders that sent fleets to empty space, while real human forces struck at undefended targets. Elena received reports from her operatives throughout the galaxy. The picture they painted was one of complete chaos among the galactic powers. 50 years of human observation and infiltration had given them perfect knowledge of how their enemies thought and acted. "Ma'am," her tactical officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They are requesting a ceasefire and immediate negotiations." Elena almost smiled. After 12 hours? They learned quickly. But before she could respond, her communications officer looked up with surprise. "There's another transmission coming in. It's from the Elders." Elena's expression became serious. The Elders rarely communicated with anyone and never during times of conflict. If they were speaking now, it meant something significant was happening. The bridge's main screen activated, showing not a single figure but representatives from multiple Elder species. The crystal form of an architect, the energy pattern of a watcher, and others that Elena recognized from old records. "Young Elena," the architect spoke, its voice like wind through crystal caves. "The time of awakening has come as we knew it would. But beware, revenge alone will bring you no peace." "The galaxy made its choice 50 years ago," Elena replied. "They chose to commit genocide. Now they face the consequences, did they?" the watcher asked, its form shifting like aurora in space. "Or did they simply act out of fear as young species often do? Your people were growing strong quickly. The established powers saw threat where there might have been alliance." Elena felt a flash of anger. "You speak of fear and misunderstanding. My people are dead because of their fear. My world is ash because of their misunderstanding. Your people live," the architect said gently. "They sleep in quantum states and walk among the stars in borrowed forms. Death came to some, but not to all. The question now is what life you will build from the ashes of the old." Before Elena could respond, alarms began sounding on her ship. Her sensor officer called out urgently, "Ma'am, we are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the galaxy. Every major power is activating their ultimate weapons. They're preparing for total war." Elena looked back at the Elder representatives. "They would rather destroy the galaxy than surrender to us." "Fear makes beings do terrible things," the Watcher said. "Your species knows this better than most. The question is, will you be ruled by fear as they were, or will you choose a different path?" Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the humans who had died 50 years ago, all the worlds that had burned, all the families that had been destroyed. When she opened them again, her decision was made. "Open a channel to all human forces," she ordered. "All units are to cease offensive operations immediately." Her bridge crew looked at her in surprise, but they obeyed. Around the galaxy, human ships that had been preparing devastating attacks suddenly went quiet. Elena opened another channel, this one broadcasting to every government and leader in the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," she said, "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Human Liberation Command. You tried to destroy us and you failed. We could now do the same to you and we would succeed, but we choose a different path." She paused, letting her words sink in across thousands of worlds. "The old galaxy is dead. The one where fear ruled decisions and genocide was considered acceptable. Today a new galaxy is born, one where humanity ensures that such horrors never happen again. You have a choice. Join us in building something better, or face the consequences of clinging to the old ways." Elena looked at the elder representatives on her screen. The architect's crystal form seemed to glow slightly brighter. "Wisdom in one so young," it said approvingly. "Perhaps there is hope for this galaxy after all." The communication ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the weight of decisions that would reshape civilization itself. The real work was just beginning. The galaxy's response to Elena's ultimatum came swiftly, and it was not what humanity had hoped for. Within hours of her broadcast, the major powers formed the Emergency Coalition. Led by the Mantari Empire and backed by the Voidani, Thek, and a dozen other species, they declared that they would never submit to human rule. Instead, they chose war. Admiral Marcus Chen received the Coalition's declaration aboard his flagship in the Sol system. He read it twice before looking up at his assembled commanders. "They want to fight," he said simply. "They would rather see the galaxy burn than accept that they were wrong 50 years ago." Captain Sarah Chen, no relation despite the shared name, studied the tactical displays showing Coalition fleet movements. "Their combined forces outnumber us 10 to 1, she reported. "They are mobilizing everything. Military ships, cargo vessels converted to carry weapons, even civilian craft." "Numbers," Admiral Chen replied with a slight smile. "They still think this is about numbers." The Coalition's strategy became clear within days. Unable to match human technology or tactical skill, they decided to overwhelm humanity through sheer volume. Every shipyard in the galaxy worked at maximum capacity, building vessels as quickly as possible. Quality was sacrificed for quantity as species that had been rivals for centuries, united against what they saw as the human threat. Elena monitored the situation from her command ship near Proxima Prime. The reports coming in from human intelligence networks painted a disturbing picture. The Coalition was not just building a military force, they were preparing for a war of extinction. "They're evacuating non-essential populations from military worlds," her intelligence chief reported. "Converting civilian infrastructure to weapons production. Some species are even discussing the use of planet-killer weapons if they can't defeat us conventionally." Elena felt a cold anger building inside her. They learned nothing. 50 years later, and their first response to a problem they cannot solve is genocide. Zekathara, who had remained aboard Elena's ship as an unofficial liaison, spoke quietly from her position near the tactical display. "Not all species agreed to the Coalition. The Altarians and several smaller powers have declared neutrality. Some are even quietly offering to mediate." "Mediate what?" Elena asked. "They want to negotiate the terms of our surrender, or perhaps discuss how thoroughly they plan to exterminate us this time." The first major battle of what historians would later call the Reckoning War took place in the Kepler system, where a Coalition fleet of over 3,000 ships encountered a human force of just 200 vessels. The Coalition commanders expected a straightforward engagement. They would use their overwhelming numerical advantage to surround and destroy the human fleet, then move on to attack human installations throughout the sector. They had not accounted for 50 years of human technological advancement. The human ships did not fight, like any vessels the galaxy had ever seen. They moved through space in impossible ways, seeming to bend the laws of physics. Their weapons struck targets that should have been out of range, while Coalition weapons passed through human ships as if they were not there. Admiral Corex, leading the Coalition forces from his flagship, watched in horror as his massive fleet was systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. "How are they doing this?" he demanded from his science officers. "Unknown, sir," came the reply. "Their ships appear to be shifting between dimensions. Our weapons cannot lock onto targets that are not fully present in our reality." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, The human fleet was intact while over 2/3 of the coalition ships were destroyed or disabled. The survivors fled in panic, carrying news of the defeat back to their governments. But the humans did not celebrate their victory. Instead, they broadcast a message to the retreating ships. "Coalition forces," came the voice of Captain Sarah Chen. "You have seen what we can do in open battle. This was not our full strength. This was not even a significant portion of our capabilities. Return to your leaders and tell them, we do not want to destroy you, but we will if you force us to." The message was heard throughout the galaxy, and it changed everything. Some coalition members began to waver. The Zakari Parliament voted to withdraw from the alliance after seeing footage of the Kepler battle. 3 minor powers declared immediate neutrality. But the core members, the Mantari, Voidani, and Thek, doubled their commitment to the war. Elena received reports of increasingly desperate measures being taken by coalition forces. They were developing new weapons specifically designed to target human technology. Biological weapons engineered to affect human physiology were being prepared. Most disturbing of all, several species were discussing the activation of ancient weapons left behind by long-dead civilizations. "They are going to destroy themselves trying to destroy us," Elena said during a strategy meeting with her senior commanders. "And they will probably take half the galaxy with them." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "Our intelligence suggests that the Mantari are preparing to activate a weapon system they found in the ruins of the predecessor civilization. They do not fully understand how it works, but they believe it can eliminate entire star systems. The predecessors built that weapon to fight something that threatened the entire galaxy millions of years ago," Elena said. "If the coalition activates it without understanding its full power," she did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood the implications. It was then that Elena made a decision that would define the rest of the war. "We end this now," she announced. "Not with more battles, not with negotiations, but with a demonstration that leaves no doubt about the outcome." "What kind of demonstration?" Captain Chen asked. Elena activated the tactical display and highlighted a star system on the edge of Coalition space. "The Zarian system. It contains the largest Coalition shipyard and their primary weapons development facility. It is also heavily defended by automated systems that the Coalition believes are impregnable." "You want to attack it directly?" Admiral Chen asked. "No," Elena replied. "I want to make it disappear." The plan Elena outlined was ambitious beyond anything humanity had attempted before. They would not just attack the Zarian system. They would remove it from normal space entirely, relocating it to a pocket dimension where it could cause no harm. The technology existed. Humanity had developed it during their 50 years of exile, based on principles learned from studying elder artifacts and dimensional physics. But it had never been tested on such a large scale. "If this works," Elena explained to her assembled commanders, "we demonstrate power beyond anything the galaxy can imagine. If it fails, we reveal a weakness that the Coalition will exploit." "And if we succeed?" Captain Chen asked. Elena looked at the display showing the target system, with its millions of Coalition personnel and countless weapons of war. "If we succeed, the war ends without us having to destroy half the galaxy to prove our point." Preparation for the operation took 6 days. Human ships and installations throughout the galaxy contributed power, technology, and personnel to the effort. Ancient human facilities that had remained hidden even from Elena began revealing themselves, offering resources and knowledge accumulated over decades of secret research. Elena stood on the bridge of humanity's largest vessel, a ship so massive it had been built around an entire asteroid. Around her, hundreds of human scientists and engineers worked to coordinate the most complex operation in galactic history. "All units report ready," her communications officer announced. Elena took a deep breath. In the next few minutes, she would either end the war or escalate it beyond all previous bounds. "Begin the translation," she ordered. Across space, human ships began generating fields of energy that warped reality itself. At the center of it all, the Zarian system began to fade from normal space as it was pulled into a carefully prepared pocket dimension. To observers throughout the galaxy, an entire star system simply vanished, taking with it the Coalition's greatest military asset, and leaving behind only empty space where a star had once burned. The demonstration worked exactly as Elena had intended. Within hours, Emergency sessions were called in every coalition government. The impossible had happened, and there was no longer any question about the outcome of the war. Humanity had not just won. They had demonstrated power that made resistance meaningless. The calls for surrender began almost immediately. 6 months after the Xerian system vanished from normal space, Elena stood in the rebuilt chambers of the Galactic Council. The ancient building had been expanded and redesigned, incorporating human technology alongside the crystal architecture of the Elders. Where once representatives of dozens of species had debated as equals, now they gathered under human oversight. The transition had not been as violent as many had expected. After the demonstration at Xerian, most species had surrendered immediately. The few that continued to resist were dealt with swiftly and precisely by human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere, accomplish their objectives, and vanish again before effective resistance could be organized. Elena walked through the halls that had once symbolized galactic unity and now represented something entirely different. Galactic order under human guidance. She was no longer just Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Awakened survivor. She had become the first administrator of the new galactic government, chosen by humanity to oversee the transition from the old chaotic system to something more stable. Zekathara approached her as she entered the main chamber. The Voidani ambassador had been one of the few non-humans to maintain a position of authority in the new order, largely because of her role in Elena's awakening. The morning reports. Administrator, Zekathara said, offering Elena a datapad. Integration of the former coalition military forces is proceeding ahead of schedule. Resistance activity has declined by 60% in the past month. Elena reviewed the information as they walked. The numbers told a story of a galaxy adapting to its new reality. Human administrators had been assigned to every major world and star system. Former military officers from various species were being retrained to serve in the new unified defense force. Trade routes that had been disrupted by the war were reopening under human supervision. What about the Mentari? Elena asked. The former leaders of the coalition had been the most difficult to integrate. Admiral Corax has agreed to serve as an advisor on traditional galactic military doctrine, Zekathara reported. He has been cooperative since his meeting with Admiral Chen. Elena nodded. She knew what that meeting had involved. Chen had shown Corax exactly how humanity had infiltrated and monitored Mentari forces for 50 years. The realization that every tactical decision, every strategic plan, every secret communication had been observed and analyzed had broken the old admiral's will to resist. They entered the council chamber where representatives from across the galaxy were gathering for the daily coordination meeting. The scene would have been familiar to observers from the old galactic order, except for one crucial difference. Every major decision was subject to approval by human oversight. Elena took her position at the head of the chamber, where the elder representatives had once sat during the rare occasions when they addressed the galaxy. Today, as every day, she would review reports, resolve disputes, and make decisions that affected trillions of lives. First item, she announced, resource allocation for the reconstruction of damaged systems. A Thek representative stood to address the chamber. Administrator, my people request additional mining equipment for the asteroid fields in Sector 7. Production has fallen below targets due to outdated machinery. Before Elena could respond, her human aide activated a holographic display showing detailed analysis of Thek mining operations. The data revealed inefficiencies that the Thek themselves had not noticed, along with recommendations for improvements that would increase productivity by 40%. Approved, Elena said. However, implementation will follow human technical specifications. Our engineers will oversee the upgrades. It was the same pattern that repeated across all aspects of galactic governance. The various species were allowed to continue their traditional activities, but always under human guidance and always using methods that humanity had improved upon during their years of observation. Some called it occupation, others called it necessary oversight. Elena preferred to think of it as education. After the morning session, Elena retreated to her private office in the upper levels of the building. Through the massive windows, she could see Proxima Prime stretching out below her. The city had changed dramatically in the months since humanity's return. New buildings incorporated human architectural principles, emphasizing efficiency and function over the elaborate decorative styles that had once been popular. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Elena activated her personal screen and was surprised to see Admiral Chen calling from the Sol system. "Elena," he said without preamble, "we need to talk. I'm sending you some information that you need to see." The data that arrived contained intelligence reports from human operatives throughout the galaxy. Elena read through them with growing concern. While the major powers had accepted human rule, underground resistance movements were forming on dozens of worlds. More troubling, some of these movements were receiving support from unknown sources. "The Elders?" Elena asked. "We don't think so," Chen replied. "This is something else. Our people have identified technology that doesn't match any known galactic civilization. Someone is supplying the resistance with weapons and equipment that our databases don't recognize." Elena leaned back in her chair thinking, survivors from the predecessor civilization? Something from outside the galaxy? Unknown. But whoever they are, they're testing our responses, probing for weaknesses. Chen's expression was grim. "Elena, I think we may have solved one problem only to discover a bigger one." Before Elena could respond, another chime sounded. This time, the incoming communication carried the unmistakable energy signature of an Elder transmission. The screen split to show both Chen and the crystal form of the architect that Elena had spoken with during the War. "Young ones," the architect said, its voice carrying harmonics that suggested great age and wisdom. "The time has come for you to understand your true purpose." "True purpose?" Elena asked. "You believed that your exile and return were about justice for your species," the architect explained. "You believed that your role was to bring order to a chaotic galaxy. These things are true, but they are not the whole truth." The architect's form shifted slightly, projecting images that Elena recognized as star charts from outside the galactic rim. For millions of years, this galaxy has been protected by barriers that keep out entities that would consume everything within it. Those barriers are failing. The civilization you call the predecessors were the last guardians of those barriers. They fell to the same entities that now seek entry. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of her office. "You're saying that the real threat is from outside the galaxy?" "The real threat has always been from outside," the architect confirmed. "Your species was allowed to develop because we recognized qualities in humanity that the galaxy would need. When the barriers finally failed completely," Admiral Chen spoke from his screen, "that would explain the unknown technology supporting the resistance movements. Advanced scouts." "Indeed," the architect said. "The entities beyond the barriers are testing your defenses, learning your capabilities, preparing for full invasion. Your unification of the galaxy under human leadership was not coincidence. It was necessity." Elena stood and walked to her window, looking out at the peaceful city below. Millions of beings from dozens of species went about their daily lives, unaware that their entire civilization might be threatened by forces from beyond the galaxy. "What do you need from us?" she asked. "What you have already begun to provide," the architect replied. "Unity, coordination, the ability to mobilize the resources of an entire galaxy in service of a single goal. The old system of competing powers and endless political debate could never have faced what is coming. Only under human guidance does this galaxy have a chance of survival." Elena turned back to the screen. "How long do we have?" "Perhaps decades. Perhaps years. The barriers weaken at different rates and the entities beyond are cautious. They will not commit to full invasion until they are certain of victory. Then we use the time we have," Elena said. "We finish integrating the galaxy's defenses, develop new technologies, prepare for a war unlike anything we've faced before. And we do it together," Admiral Chen added. "All species, all worlds united under human leadership." The architect's form brightened slightly. "This is why the Elders allowed events to unfold as they did. Your species' greatest strength is not your technology or your tactical skill. It is your ability to unite others in service of survival. You transform enemies into allies, competitors into collaborators." After the communication ended, Elena remained at her window for a long time. The galaxy she ruled was not the prize she had thought it was. It was a responsibility beyond anything she had imagined. Sekthara entered the office quietly. "Administrator, the afternoon session is about to begin." Elena turned from the window. "Cancel today's session. Call an emergency meeting of all senior administrators and military commanders. and send a message to every human facility in the galaxy. We need to accelerate all defensive preparations. Is there a problem? Zekthara asked. Elena smiled, but it was not a happy expression. The same problem the galaxy has always had, Zekthara. Something bigger and more dangerous than ourselves wants to destroy us.